before we jump away from this picture here, I just want to say that the picture on your screen, the one we've been using for a background for today's worship service, is one that I took after a bike ride up to the top of Big Rock. And this is looking over on Lucas Valley or Nicasio Valley. I mentioned that because I want to talk to you a little bit about that bike ride. Let me stop my shared screen here and spotlight my video so you can see my beautiful face this morning. Got a nice haircut and everything. I want to tell you about a bike ride I had. That one, in fact. So that was the first time that I took my bike and decided to crawl up. Yes, crawl is probably the right word for it. Up to Big Rock. And I'll tell you what, I took that picture because it was so spectacular, so beautiful, overlooking that valley. That's actually not the real reason. The reason I stopped up there was because I thought I was going to topple over. I was out of energy. My legs were dead. I had nothing left. And not only that, but on top of that, I felt humiliated at the top of that climb. I felt like a loser. Let me tell you why. And some of you can probably relate to this. On the way up this climb, I was passed many times by many different riders. Now, I should say, the first rider I could understand. He was an athlete. He was built for cycling. He was tall, he was thin, and he zipped right past me. Perfect. I can let that one go. I should have said that I'm a very competitive kind of guy. So you may not see that in me very often, but I am. I want to win, right? So he passed me. The next person that passed me on the climb had to be in his mid-70s. And he was on a big mountain bike. Not an e-bike, nothing with extra power, on a big mountain bike, and he zipped past me too. All right, fair enough. The next group that passed me was a dad and his son, and I kid you not, his son was probably 12 years old. And they too zipped past me. And then finally, if that's not enough and my self-esteem hasn't hit rock bottom already, I was passed then by a senior citizens bike club out for their local casual stroll that morning. I know, because here I am breathing and I can't even talk because I'm out of breath. And each one of them says, "Good morning to you. How are you? You're doing well." Almost condescending like, you know. At this point, I have no self-esteem left. I am out. So when I hit the top, I'm not only exhausted, glad I made it, but exhausted, but I just feel horrible. I feel like I'm a loser because I grew up knowing what it is to be on top, knowing what it is to win, to succeed. And I'll tell you what, that wasn't it. I was not in a place of winning or success or on the top of anything. Granted, I was on the top of a hill, but you know what I mean. So I felt cruddy. Now, before you say anything, I know this is one of those stories that starts out, well, then he went back and he put in all the time and effort and now he's beaten everybody. Well, that's not true, but I am getting better over time. But I started reflecting on that experience when it comes to faith. Because faith is kind of a backwards thing sometimes. Faith doesn't always operate like these kinds of worldly experiences. You know, for instance, faith begins as a gift, right? Faith is given to us. We don't earn it. We don't buy it. We don't network for it and ask a buddy to get us in on God's good side. No. Faith is just given to us. So that's kind of strange to begin with. But then you think about it, and growing in faith too, it's a weird thing as well. Because in order to grow in faith, You have to become a loser. What do I mean by that? Well, we'll get into that. You have to become a loser for Christ. So we'll get into that. But first, I want to talk to you about Peter in our passage this morning, because I think Peter helps us understand what it is to become a loser. Peter, he's one of my top 11 disciples or so, right? You either love him or you don't love him. He's very exuberant. He goes out there and says what's on his mind and doesn't let anything stop him. He's that kind of guy. So just a paragraph before our passage this morning, Peter is on fire. Jesus asks, "Who do you say that I am?" And Peter, without missing a beat, says, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." And Jesus is like, "Yes, you get it. You get it. On you, Peter, I will build my church. You are the rock, the foundation that will last for all time." Can you imagine Peter's response? "I did it. I did something right. Well done. Good job. Pat on the back." Well, it doesn't last very long, does it? Because here we are, not a paragraph later, and Peter's already putting his foot in his mouth again. Here is the rock that Jesus is going to build his church on. And Jesus says to him, he's talking about, I'm going to have to die. I'm going to be tortured. I'm going to be hurt, and then I'm going to die. And Peter, his response is, "Oh, of course you're not. Surely not." And Jesus immediately says, "Get behind me, Satan. You're becoming a stumbling block for me." Can you imagine the whiplash that Peter feels here? Wait, I thought you said I was your rock, but now you're like, "Get behind me, Satan"? What in the world? I'm not sure Peter quite grasped what just happened to him. But it makes sense as you read deeper into the passage. Because in that passage before, Peter got something. He saw something beyond the normal everyday world view, beyond what other people could see. He saw Jesus for who Jesus is. But now he's come in to this very next passage, and it's almost like he's lost sight of that again. He's lost sight of what he just grasped and moved his mindset back to human things and the way that he knows the world works. And so Jesus says, "Oh, you just had it, but you lost it. You're focusing on human things again. When I'm talking about divine things, you need to change your mindset. Get out of that worldview, that box that you're stuck in, Peter, and see the divine things in front of you." And so Jesus uses this moment as a teaching moment for his disciples, and he starts saying some strange things. And what I love about this passage, and maybe hate a little bit too, hate's not the right word, but I find very challenging, are these next few words that Jesus says. Because it's not just a challenge for those disciples then, it's a huge challenge for the church today. Because it's a challenge that says, get out of that mindset, get out of that human worldview, and focus in on something different. Focus in on things that relate to what God's up to. So Jesus says to his disciples, let me go here. If any of you want to become my followers, you need to deny yourselves, take up your cross, and follow me. Deny yourselves. Take up your cross, which we know a cross is a symbol of sacrifice. Ultimately, will become that symbol of Jesus' death, right? Deny that human worldview, sacrifice, and follow me. That's discipleship. I know some of you may be thinking, that's not what I signed up for. Just Jesus loves me and that's it, right? I don't have to do anything, right? I can sit back, relax, and let the blessings flow. Well, not exactly. The call of a disciple of this kind of life is different. It's not like the worldly way of being that we think we know so well. It's in Jesus. It's a different worldview. Jesus also says something else after that Sally really grasped this morning and helped lift out of the text. For those who want to save their life will lose it. And those who lose their life for my sake will find it. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's not the way the world works. You got to go out there and you got to get it. You got to be a go-getter. You got to put yourself out there and make it happen. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps and seize the day, right? That's not exactly the message we hear Jesus saying here at all. Lose your life for my sake. Don't grasp after those things you think are going to make your life better. Lose your life for my sake, and you will find it. It makes no sense. To the disciples, I could see their faces like, what did he say? Peter, you got that? And I imagine they're all grumbling. I always think of the disciples as kind of whispering amongst themselves, you know what he's talking about? You guys got it? Because Jesus always says things that seem backwards or nonsensical even at times. But Jesus is trying to get them to lose that worldly paradigm they're stuck in, to pick up on what really matters, to pick up that worldview, that paradigm that Jesus is all about. Jesus is operating and sharing a different kind of a logic that they're not used to. It's not the logic of the world. It's a logic that runs by forgiveness and mercy and love and grace. And it's not the logic of violence and retribution and hate or discrimination or wealth or status or power or greed. It doesn't operate the same way. And Jesus knows without a shadow of a doubt that this power, the powers of the day that be, are going to kill him. He knows without a shadow of a doubt he will be killed because of what he's saying here, because of this shifting mindset. He's going to be killed by the powers that be: dominion, domination, greed, lust, selfish power, selfishness. They're going to see Jesus as an obstruction, and they're going to move him away. They're going to kill him. Jesus knows it, and he's trying to share it with his disciples. So Peter thinks out loud exactly what everybody else is thinking. But Peter he doesn't just think, he does it where everybody can hear, right? Peter says, not you, Jesus. Because to him, death is the end. If Jesus dies, everything he says, everything he preaches doesn't mean anything. And they're following after him doesn't mean anything if Jesus is going to die. That's the way the world works. That's the way the world has taught the disciples to think. This is the end. If Jesus loses his life, then it's all for nothing. Makes sense. That's in some ways how we think too. But we know as Christians that that's not the whole story here, is it? That death is not the end of Jesus' story. In fact, Jesus is telling his disciples that in 3 days he will rise again. But how many of them are hearing that? They're stuck at he dies, right? They're not seeing what might happen afterwards. People don't raise from the dead. That's kind of nonsense, right? That's Jesus' divine speak. They're stuck at he's going to die, and that's going to be the end. But resurrection changes everything. Resurrection changes the ball game that's being played. It validates everything that Jesus is saying. It validates this loser lifestyle, this being a loser for Christ. It validates that message beyond any kind of reproach. To be a loser for Christ. Literally, one who loses the ways of the world for the sake of love, for the sake of grace, for the sake of mercy. A loser for Christ. Here's the truth about this text that I think is really important for us. Whether you've been in the church all your life or this is your first time and you're not a Christian, you don't know Jesus, you're going to find truth in this piece of the text. This message is for you and it can change your life. And here it is, the truth that needs to be lifted up. We always want a little bit more in this life, don't we? We always want just a little bit more. That's the way our world works, right? If you're not feeling whole and satisfied and complete, go get that life you want. Go out there and prosper on your own. Go get some more wealth. Go get some more material things. Just get a little bit more security, a little bit more status, a little bit more power in your life. You can do it. It's within your power. Seize the day. But the truth is, a little bit more will never be enough in this world. A little bit more of those things that we think make a difference in life will not fulfill our lives, will not give us life, ever. And we can go after it all we want to, and it will never satisfy us. But the truth is, Jesus didn't come to comfort us with just a little bit more. Jesus came instead to free us, freeing us to see that that little bit more that we want will never satisfy us. In fact, what Jesus is freeing us from is seeing this worldview, this ideology that says we need a little bit more, and throwing that out the window, losing it altogether, because it will never be life-giving. It will never satisfy your life or my life. Jesus is saying you need to become a loser. Lose that for the sake of grace and mercy and love that I am giving you. Jesus wants us to see that this promise he makes is real. It has been made real in resurrection. A loser for Christ is one who sheds the idea that all we need is a little more. Someone who sheds the notion that real power is found in violence or domination or greed or material things or wealth or whatever it is. A loser for Christ is someone who loses his life, literally gives of themselves to love God and love neighbor. To lose of themselves for Christ. Forgiving when you want retribution or revenge. Showing mercy when that's the last thing you want to give. Caring for the poor and the outcast and the immigrant. When society says they are a blight on society, ignore them. When society says be apathetic to others, one that loses himself for Christ is empathetic and shows compassion and mercy and grace. A loser for Christ is what Christ calls us to be. And what's strange, and this is what Jesus tries to get at that his disciples don't quite get. What's strange is that the more we live into this sacrificial way of life, giving of ourselves for the sake of others, for love, the more we find our lives, our true lives, the more we are satisfied, the more we find fullness and wholeness in this life. It doesn't make worldly sense that the more we give away, the more we find ourselves in true life. But that is resurrection. That is the power of resurrection in the world, the power of resurrection in our lives, and the power that will transform this world from here and now until that day when there is no more poverty, where there is no more war and violence. There is only grace and love. Because we can rest assured that that day is coming, that Christ is transforming this world. And even though we look around and we see this world and the prevalent powers within it, and we think they're strong and there's no way out of it, that greed and lust and power and violence and domination will last forever, we can rest assured in Jesus Christ that it has seen its day and it is being diminished even now as we speak. That is our hope, friends. And it begins with being a loser for Christ. Friends, saints, go out and be a loser. Lose yourself for the sake of others. Love God, love other people. Drop the pretenses of this worldview that we see, that we debate about and wrestle with and divides us. And let's get back to the heart of the gospel that unites people all over, that helps us see the world through the compassionate eyes of Jesus Christ. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Take me back to the place that feels like home, to the people I can't depend on, to the faith that's in my bones. Take me back to a preacher and a verse where they've seen me at my worst, to the love I had at first. Oh, I want to go to church.